Hi there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Crystal Wittevrongle, collaborating with Common Sense Calgary, here with Mike Jamieson, who is running for Calgary City Council on Ward 12 in our upcoming city election, October 2025. Mike, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, I'd love to hear more about you. What background are you bringing with you into City Hall?
Yeah, well, I am a born and raised Calgarian, and I work in the commercial construction industry in Calgary. So I'm a partner in a commercial construction company, and as a business owner, I just really think that we need more business minds on city councils to make the complex decisions that are required, spending Calgary's $5 billion budget.
Yes, yes. And so when you're talking to people and Calgarians, especially those in your ward, what are you hearing are some of the top priorities for this election?
I do have a detailed survey that's been done, and I've door knocked well over 13,000 doors now. So a lot of information has come in, a lot of small business owners I've been able to connect with, and everybody in between. And I would say the top three for sure. Number one is affordability and taxes. Um,
Hmm.
I think that most people, it's not that we're allergic to taxes. It's that, I think most people just really want to feel a fair value for what they're paying. And if nothing appears to improve, but a lot more money, is paid every year, people start to wondering, where's my money going, and how do we make life more affordable? And so that's the first one. The second item at the door, I find is it's coming down to public safety. A lot of people really feel that Calgary is less safe 4 years after the last election, and I think most people want more police, and they want to feel that the response time is getting shorter, not longer, in case they ever have to call 911. And the third thing is probably more to do with like local sort of issues or decisions that city council in the last 4 years have made. Two in particular very unpopular items that have been brought up to me many times are the blanket rezoning. Um, you might get into that, but I absolutely am against it, and I will vote to repeal it. And the second one that really upsets a lot of Calgarians is the climate emergency, the $87 billion climate emergency. And most people in Ward 12 that I talk to want that repealed also. So that's kind of in a snapshot the top three things that have been brought up to me.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so hearing that these are the top priorities and the top challenges, gets me thinking about who's best positioned to meet these challenges or actually put the work in. And I know some Calgarians really feel that the role of city government and municipal government has become unclear or has really shifted in recent years. In your perspective, what is the core role for city council and for city hall?
It should be the simplest, most boring, like municipal politics should be boring. It should be roads, it should be bridges, infrastructure, fixing potholes, garbage collection. You know, we've got our core essential services that most Calgarians want our tax dollars invested in. And it seems like right now the city is involved in a lot of pet projects or a lot of things that really have nothing to do with the city of Calgary and their jurisdiction. And what is resonating with a lot of people, and why a lot of people are joining the Mike Jamieson campaign is because I really want to focus on having our energy and our resources better allocated to our essential services and the things that get us to work, the things that get our kids to school. And you know what? A lot of people don't want any more big blue rings. They just want better roads, and it's a bit of an analogy, but it's the focus on how we're going to spend our money, and we really Calgary. I think most people agree should stay in its lane and do a better job at the things we're supposed to do a better job of, and then we might have the ability to do other stuff after.
And so, speaking of spending, there's been a lot of it. There's been record increases in property taxes. Spending seems to be off the rails most of the time, at least according to most Calgarians. What are your thoughts on the current spending levels of City Hall? And if you're elected, what will you do within that context?
Yeah, well, we really need some fiscal sanity brought back. You know, we I feel that the Calgary has enough money. In fact, there was a surplus, of $221 million that was announced. So that's essentially we were overtaxed a lot of money. And if my numbers are correct, it's about $18 million for 1%. So $221 million, that's about 12%, or could be a potential 12% property increase, tax increase that essentially we didn't have to have. And that's just in overtaxation. You know, if we aligned ourselves more with what Calgarians are saying and started listening and focusing really more on our essential services, I believe that we have enough money right now to do a 4-year tax freeze, no question about it, and still improve the services that Calgarians are relying on.
And so is that your perspective then? Is that taxes should be frozen?
Yes, yeah, if not decreased. But I think it's very important also that I think the average taxpayer doesn't understand where the money's going, and I think
Mhm.
they don't trust the current council and the current administration, and I think a lot of people would want to see even an outside organizational review of all city of departments, and really to ascertain like not only where we can find cost savings, but how does you know the average Calgarians say that this year a 6 to 10% tax hike. Okay, so when that happens year after year, and maybe a little less, people want to know, well, how can what is Calgary doing with my money? And that's what a lot of
Mhm.
people ask. They say how can it just go into this big pot and then just completely disappear? And maybe some things are improving, okay, but the perception is that they're not, because there's
Mhm.
more potholes now than ever before. The response times are not less for the average Calgarian, and they just they want to see value. And I think as somebody that's been in the commercial construction industry for a long time, when I'm managing a multi-million dollar project and budget, and I don't mind spending money if I feel there's a value, and that's the key is what's a return on investment. And the average taxpayer feels that they don't have a very good return right now. So Calgary
Mhm.
needs to do a better job of explaining that and helping the average taxpayer understand that if things are improving, how are they improving, and show that.
Mhm. And so with that budget surplus that you mentioned that we're expecting this year, if you're in city council, what do you think should be done with that money? Should it be returned to taxpayers? Should it be put away for a rainy day or, in a reserve fund? What would you vote for?
It should 100% be returned to taxpayers. It's our money. It was more was taken than should have. And this idea that Calgary can overtax us and then just keep it really angers a lot of Calgarians and a lot of people in Ward 12. Essentially, the taxpayer, they want their money back.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing that really angers Calgarians, from what I hear, is when they're not listened to, or when they feel that they're not listened to, which is something that a grand majority of folks seem to think when it comes to the blanket rezoning. There was public hearings, lots of opposition, and yet City Council moved forward with this policy. What are your thoughts on blanket rezoning, and what are you hearing from those in your ward?
Well, I think the number one priority of a city councilor is to listen to the people first, the people that got the elected and the constituents of their ward. In Ward 12, for example, close to 73%, from what I understand, did not want uh, the current incumbent councillor Evan Spencer to vote in favor of it, and he did anyways. And I think that it really erodes a lot of trust in our elected officials, which I believe that at all levels is an all-time low right now. Um, when your number one priority, which is to represent the constituency, you do the opposite of, and it's not acceptable. And we need somebody like me that will stand up and represent the community. When thousands of people tell me that they do not want the blanket rezoning, they never wanted it. The some of the data shows that it's in the high 70s or mid 70s% of people in Ward 12 did not want this. I will repeal. I will vote to repeal it without
Mhm.
question, because it's not what Ward 12 wants. And no matter what the agenda is, no matter if there's federal dollars attached, and whatever the reason, I think Calgarians thought that whole they called it a circus downtown. The hearing that had thousands of people speak against it, and then they kind of did whatever they wanted anyways. And that's kind of leads to what you had mentioned, that people really feel, especially on that issue, that they were not listened to, and we need to do a better job. Ward 12 deserves a better job.
And so, do you think that for large policies like that, especially when they impact all of Calgary, do you think that something like that should be put directly to voters, like in a plebiscite, versus having city council vote on it?
Yeah, I am not against plebiscites at all. I think that in large issues they make sense, and people are. I think people want to be heard. So how do we prove to the average voter in Ward 12 that your city councilor is listening to you, the administration is listening to you? If it's not a plebiscite, then there should be some kind of a survey or poll. You know, actual data to show what people think, what they want, and especially on very big controversial issues, which was the blanket rezoning issue. I'm against blanket anything. I don't think blanket approach to anything is good. I think a community-based approach is needed, because we have such a diverse amount of communities in Calgary. We've got brand new ones. Ward 12 is a very fast-growing ward around Seaton. There's 5 new communities that didn't exist 4 years ago, and then you have legacy communities in other wards. That have beautiful single-family bungalow type homes on large lots, and they simply just don't want 6 or 8 plexes beside them. And when people invest a substantial amount of their money and their retirement into their home, it does become part of their a lot of times retirement strategy. And when you invest in an area and then the city changes the rules and potentially allows something that could affect the future sale of your house or the future value, it's not fair, and it should not be done.
And so the city has said that there's been 1,500 new units that have been created through the blanket rezoning, or approximately thereabouts. And so is viewing it somewhat as a success in that regard. What do you think about that? Is that the right metric to use when we're assessing a policy like this?
No, because I think a lot of that would have happened anyways. There is local area plan and development, and there's ability to develop spaces right now that was, well, previously that was in place already. And from what I understand, it wasn't that difficult, if you went through the process to get development done. But at the end of the day, I think development should happen where it makes sense, where we have the
Mhm.
infrastructure in place, where we have the transit, where we have the parking. You know, like there is a place for high density, and there is a place, but um, not everywhere, and not a blanket approach. We need to
Mhm.
have more respect for the communities and how they grow, and let them speak and listen to them.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And so when it comes to housing, in the blanket rezoning, some people have said that it has done nothing for affordability, especially when it comes to affordable housing. What is your perception or perspective on affordability with regards to affordable housing?
Well, the whole supply and demand theory, I think, is what a lot of people cite as, okay, if we have you know X number more places available, then it will bring the overall, price down, for rental units, for example. But the issue is the construction costs and how expensive land is, and the construction process. And a lot of these new construction projects, yes, they have increased the amount of livable spaces, but they're not cheap. And you have to have a lot of money to get into them. And so if the goal is to help low income Calgarians, well, that completely is out of reach for them anyways. So I think it's a
Mhm.
terrible idea.
And so, in terms of affordable housing, what role do you see the city playing, if anything?
Well, I think everybody does need to have a safe place to live, and you need you need the infrastructure in place. So I think that right now, the I will say the blanket damage has been done. Projects that already have um, started will continue, and some things will be grandfathered. And um, but I think it needs to be stopped immediately, though. And I think that we have enough right now to work with. If you
Mhm.
even look at the current state of real estate and the current market right now, right now, I mean, 2 years ago, a house sold probably, in 24 to 48 hours. About a year ago, it was maybe, a week. And I believe, talking to a few realtors here this week, that they're saying that houses are on the market now for a month to 2 months. So, and also you have some fantastic, home builders in Calgary that are offering some big premiums right now to try to get new customers, incentives, and just because of how much it's slowed down. And
Mhm.
so I think that is a huge indicator that you need to, where's the market, how quickly your house is being sold, what are the builders offering, as incentives, and all that kind of shows a larger picture of where Calgary's actual housing market really is.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, affordability plays into that a lot too, right? I mean, folks are really feeling it these days. And so, do you think that the city should be subsidizing housing for lower income Calgarians or play a different role, perhaps, speeding up approvals or some other measure when it comes to housing?
Well, I think that most Calgarians want the city of Calgary to focus on our core issues. And I think that, really comes down to our infrastructure and, and that sort of thing. Um, in saying that, Calgary is a pretty big investor right now in low income housing. I mean, we have the Calgary uh, can't remember the name, but it's low income housing. Calgary owns a lot of buildings, millions and millions of dollars of buildings, and they do subsidize a lot of that already.
Hmm.
Um, I think I'm not against that. Ultimately, we do need people to have a place to live, and not everybody, you know, the income in Calgary is very diverse, and we do need options for lower income Calgarians, especially Calgarians on age and other things. But I think that right now there's a place for Calgary to help, but I don't think that should be the number one focus of the way that Calgary goes in the next 4 years. We really need to get costs down, and people really want tax relief. And I think that we need to be very mindful of that, and also our small business. I mean, a lot of decisions that Calgary make are not in the best interest of our small business. And we need to make a climate that they can be profitable again, and we don't tax them to death. The non-residential property taxes is pretty heavy, especially around downtown, which is a whole nother issue, which is our 30+% vacancy rate. And it's never going to improve unless we can start getting a climate in Calgary for investment and for growth. Businesses need to make money to hire more employees, and that creates great jobs, which creates prosperity. And I think everything is connected to the small business growth in the city. And when that's forgotten about, I think that's a major indicator that we need to change course.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and these big decisions that City Hall makes sometimes seem divorced from current realities. So thinking about, the four major projects that were approved in recent years, the new event center, the BMO expansion, Foothills Field House, and the Arts Commons transformation. The chief financial officer for the city had said that we couldn't take on more than one of those projects without significant financial risk, yet council approved all four. What are your thoughts on that?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. We don't have the money for it. I mean, if there would have been maybe a 10-year plan or something. Now I do understand, like I'm in construction, I do understand that the longer you wait for things, the more money they cost. Okay. But you know, this is like you said, it's just way too much too quickly. And I think that most people did want more of a voice on the event center. You know, um, that was like I think a lot of people when this gets brought up at the doors, they talk about the old deal and they wish that we had the old deal. And Calgary could have recouped a lot of their investment, the way that the old deal was structured. And now we can't, and we won't. And we might be out anywhere from $300 to $500 million more than we would have. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of taxpayer money. And I guess that gets back to one of the original questions: should Calgarians be more involved in large projects? And I think the answer is yes. And just because you have a city council that has a certain agenda and they want to move forward on some stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what Calgarians want and that's their priority. Some people's priority is the event center, but most people's priority is affordability.
Mhm. Yeah. And so if you're in city council and forced to choose between those four projects, which would you prioritize?
Well, if I had to, okay, hypothetically, if I had to, I would have supported the event center before the other ones, and
Mhm.
and I would have, let's get one done, and then let's move on to another one.
Mhm.
We really need to let Calgarians know that we're listening, and I mean, I know it's a bit cliche to say, but we do need to show respect for the taxpayer again. And our
Mhm.
small businesses are looking to council and administration to start making decisions that are going to help and not hurt them. And
Mhm.
when tax dollars subsidize or go toward projects, it does make things less affordable. And
Mhm.
I think it's key that we need to get back to a booming uh, Calgary again. Where the entrepreneurial's dream, where people move from all provinces. It is becoming a rare thing to be a born and raised Calgarian. And like you door knock thousands of doors, you understand that it's quite rare. And most people in Calgary are not born and raised Calgarians. They've come from other cities, usually for work. It's for good paying jobs and to prosper and bring opportunity to their kids and their family. And that is really the Calgary and the Alberta dream. And
Mhm.
we need to do a good, be a better steward as city and as councillors on making that happen. And I think that if you simply, like, one thing that I'm going to do, and if you simply just ask a question when a proposal comes in front of me, I'm simply going to ask, how is this going to affect small business? If you simply ask that question, it could change the outcome of the way that you would vote. For example, bike lanes. I mean, bike lanes downtown, it's a highly contentious issue right now. How does that decision affect the retail businesses that bike lane is going to eliminate the parking in front of? It's a very fair question. And I think that if we change the focus toward supporting the businesses that create jobs and pay taxes, I think that we will take a step in the right direction.
Mhm. Mhm. And so these large projects, talking about them always leads me into thinking about the Green Line LRT, which is one of the most contentious topics for many people. Supporters
Yeah.
are behind it 100%, often, citing that we need it no matter the cost. And others think that perhaps it's changed so much in scope since what the original project was, and it's way more expensive than originally thought. Um, what are your thoughts on the Green Line LRT?
Well, first of all, you can never have anything no matter the cost. Okay. You always need to consider the cost because it's taxpayers' money. Like, and as somebody that builds and develops things, like, cost is very, very important. And so that's first and foremost. You need to, that needs to be front and center. Um, I think years ago, maybe I was not in favor of the Green Line. But, if I'm truly listening to Calgarians and in Ward 12, for example, you know, now it is community based. Different communities in Ward 12 want different things. But I can
Hmm.
tell you that most doors that I've knocked, that the Green Line gets brought up, people want it to the Seton Hospital. So the South Calgary Hospital, and people feel that a decade ago when the hospital was built, that they were expecting it then, or they were expecting construction, or maybe it was a veiled promise that people thought it was going to come. Well, it's
Hmm.
been say a decade now since or more since the hospital was built, and well, we're many years away from even getting to 130th, which is Shepherd Station now, right? So
Hmm.
I think that what I will do, because you know the old saying is nothing happens quick in the city of Calgary except taking our taxes, right? And so what I think is that what I can do is I can be an advocate to get the funding and get the ball rolling, because there's a lot of engineering, there's a lot of permitting, there's a lot of development that has to go into these type of projects, and they take a long time. It takes several years. So I think that if we can plan this, say over the next decade, I mean, so I'm, assuming I win on October 20th and I become the next city councilor of Ward 12, um, then I can start working toward the planning of this expansion past where it's going to stop now. And there is a corridor, there is down 52nd Street. So yeah, so my official stance now on the Green Line and the expansion to the hospital is a pro stance based on people. If I truly want to represent them, that's what they're saying. But not everybody's pro. I mean, there's a lot of concern that gets brought up. For example, a lot of people bring up that if the LRT is extended, well, then a lot of the crime, a lot of the homelessness, a lot of drugs and that sort of thing will come with it. And this is real concerns that are brought up too to me,
Hmm.
that it'll introduce into the far southeast communities a whole element that doesn't exist right now, and it'll make it a lot easier for that to happen. I tell them that, yeah, that is a real thing, and that's where CPS and transit police, and this is where Calgary needs to you know be a real priority in protecting and public safety, like the number one priority. But um, it's going to take a long time, and I tell people that you don't have to worry about that for at least 10 years, and is my guesstimate. But I think that you know developing and making Calgary a better place, you know, um, will lead to more investment and more growth. And you also got to manage the people that you have. For example, a lot of people don't know that in Seaton and around the South Hospital is a very high dense multifamily area.
Hmm.
In that area, and a lot of the outlier, like brand new communities, um, public transit or lack of is a huge concern. Let me just tell you a quick story. There was a lady that started crying at the door because she had a concern that her daughter had to walk 3 kilometers to the nearest main bus hub, which is closer to the hospital, from Rangeview, and had to take a bus to the high school, a city bus, and she had to make an arrangement with the the high school that the daughter could show up 35 minutes late every day, because that is the soonest the bus could arrive at the high school. And then when she comes home, she's got to walk another 3 kilometers because there is not enough transit access to these new communities that surround the exterior of Ward 12. So this is the kind of stories that are being shared with me, and you know what, it kind of say, it makes me think, Calgary, if you want to develop these areas, and it's great, we need we do need areas to people live, but we need to focus on infrastructure. We really
Mhm.
need to focus getting that there first. Let's get better transit plan in place. Like these people, a lot of them feel stranded, and no high school student should walk 3 kilometers, just to get to a bus, just to get to their school. I mean, it's just that's really bad, and we need to do better.
And so speaking of transit, we do see it, reduced ridership in a lot of areas. People are
Yep.
are avoiding transit for safety concerns. Downtown specifically, we see a lot of issues around LRTs, but even in other communities, folks are really hesitant nowadays to take transit. What are your thoughts on the city's current transit strategy as it relates to safety?
It's not working.
Hmm.
It's not working. I don't feel safe taking the C train at night. I mean, I can only imagine, not very many people do, and I think for the most part, if people don't have to, they won't.
Hmm.
And so if city's goal to get less cars on the road and more people on riding buses and riding our C train, then we need to make it a lot safer. And we need to people to feel that, if they ride on it or if their kids are riding on it, that nothing's going to happen to them. And
Hmm.
does that mean we need to hire more peace officers? And absolutely. We really need to curve, this issue, and we need to do it very quickly.
Hmm. And so would you be in favor of something like a closed gate system? I know council discussed it within the last few years, but rejected it due to cost and some logistical issues. But is that something you'd be willing to revisit or other potential remedies?
You know what? It's an idea, and I'm glad that at least there's some positive ideas that are being brought forward that could make a difference. Um, you know what? I think that they've cited other cities where they've done this and they've had success, and where it kept some of the crime or some of the issues away from the actual platforms, and people can feel safe when they pay and go through that gate. Um, I like the idea because I think it's a step in the right direction, and that is the kind of thinking that we need. We got to think outside the box. We got to solve a problem, and that's literally what I have been doing for a lot of years. Is when you're a senior project manager in construction, you solve problems because people don't usually call me when things are going good. They call me when there's problems, and you really need that kind of approach. You need to be able to and you know what? Kudos on at least coming up with what I think is a step in the right direction, because the solution isn't just more transit police. Sometimes you do need some physical barriers to aid in that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like public safety is a concern in many respects for the city. And when we think about things like the supervised consumption site downtown Calgary, there's been quite a tug of war with the province over managing it and whether it's closed or moved, or what happens, kind of with it at all. What are your thoughts on the supervised consumption site in downtown Calgary?
I'm 100% against it.
And so do you think it should be
I think
closed?
yes, I think it should be closed. I think that it creates huge safety concerns for residential houses and businesses around that location. And I think it was a very bad idea from the very beginning.
And so what would you propose as an alternative, like for to serve those population that relies on it, that needs some of the services provided?
I, that's largely a provincial issue. And I know that they work hard to try to deal with this problem every day. It does overlap with the city because of our resources that go into it. For example,
Hmm.
CPS and other avenues that have to our fire department. They are, from what I understand, the fastest responders to most, not only fires but also most emergency type issues.
Hmm.
So there is a draw, and there is a cost to Calgarians, but I don't think that having a legal, safe place to do drugs is a good idea at all, and I don't think that we should be part of that as a city.
And so, if the province were to be the one to head, whether it relocates or closes, what role do you think the city should play in that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think getting people the help they need. I don't think that people are homeless by itself. I think that mental, health and substance abuse is very connected to, a lot of the homeless problem, and I think people are hurting, and I think they need help, and I think that we need compassion for a lot of we don't understand people's backgrounds, and a lot of it, when you look into it, it comes from childhood trauma and a lot of other stuff. And I think that if you don't get people the help they need, so this is what I mean when I say I'm against that, because I'm more pro getting people support and getting them the help to get off the addictions and getting a safe place to live and transition afterward. And I think that if you focus more on that and less on giving them a place to um, safely do drugs, I think we can actually help a lot of people more than we are now.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely one of those questions where the city and the province need to work together, but how? And so it's definitely a tough situation. Another situation that was
Well,
really
I,
tough.
I will say one thing though. Yeah, it seems like there is a missing link though, and there is some programs to help, help with a lot of the mental health issues and substance abuse issues and the rehab type programs, um,
Mhm,
but then getting them. I know everybody in their life, I think in Calgary, most people know somebody that struggles with this. And I think that the key is you can get them the some support services, but I think if they don't have a safe place to live, then it's kind of all for nothing because the cycle will repeat itself. But what I think then at that point, I think there's a missing link between the province and the city, and I think you make a really good point that there are issues that overlap, and Calgary does need to work with the province. We have to work with our provincial and federal governments in, you know, coming up with a solution and being part of, a positive, uh, avenue for people to get the success that they need. And there is a missing link right now that I can see, and I hopefully, if I'm a city councillor on October 20th, I can work, very very well with the provincial government to try to, you know, curb some of this, some of these issues.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and so when we look at some of the bigger issues, affecting Calgary, it's often things that maybe we don't see. Like I'm thinking critical infrastructure. And so we saw last year the critical water main break, that impacted Calgarians for a very long time. Um, how do you feel about the way that the city managed that, from everything from communication to mitigation?
Yeah, it's actually quite embarrassing, and a lot of people are still upset about that. That gets brought up. I mean, even when it seemed like we had a pretty rainy summer, especially in July. I got rained out quite a few times, but it got pretty hot in August, and you know, Calgarians haven't forgot. There's a lot of people that got brought up. They said they better not try this stunt again because my grass, my plants, my flowers, need water, and so and people think it just took a ridiculous amount of time. And I think a lot of it was what was communicated. So there was like safety concerns that were cited, and there was it seemed like this and that, and nobody really knew why, what seemed like a relatively simple line break to repair. I mean, pipeline companies do it all the time, and they can theoretically do it in a couple days, and this took maybe over a month. It seemed like a long time, and it's still not clear to Calgarians why it took so long. And
Mhm.
so, yes, I think that the communication was really bad, and I think that the frustration, I think a lot of people are frustrated because they don't believe that Calgary is doing a very good job of preventative maintenance. So I
Mm,
think a lot of Calgarians feel that Calgary runs things to break. And then once they break, then they deal with it. And
mhm,
I think that most people in Ward 12 that have tax concern issues say we want a better preventive maintenance program. Like we want the
mhm,
city to start replacing some of this old water line before it hits fail.
mhm,
And I've heard some numbers. I don't exactly know the exact amount, but I have heard that there is a substantial amount of water that is lost underground right now in these old pipes. They're leaking,
mhm,
and it's quite a waste. And so I mean, I'm a resident of Ward 12, and I have the same question. Why aren't we fixing it then? Why are we
mhm.
taking so long? Like, why are we waiting for things to break? And that needs to be answered.
And so what would you change then about the way that the city prioritizes critical infrastructure?
Well, an interesting idea that got brought up to me was for Calgary to have a water commission where they separate the water aspect from MMAX and our utilities right now, and there's just a commission just specializes just in our water and upgrading our water, our aging infrastructure and getting it to be, a world class, sort of, infrastructure type capacity. And I don't disagree with that. I like that idea, and that could be something that we could explore.
Mhm. Interesting. I haven't heard that one before. I'd be interested to know more about that sometime. But um, yeah, and so the last thing I want to touch on is that this is an interesting time for the election because it's the first time where there are municipal parties taking place for the election. Do you want to share anything about your affiliations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started as a candidate, even before I joined a municipal party. So I was an independent, but and you know what? A long time ago, I was not. I didn't like the idea. Actually, I thought that maybe it would hurt kind of the independent strategy that went on. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that. So I've got young kids. A lot of families are very busy, and I think that most people don't have the time. Well, not that they have time, but they don't make the time to or they don't have the time to read, say 12 platforms. Okay, so you've got 12 candidates, you've got 12 independent platforms. Who has time to do that? Who has time to read through all of them to figure out where they stand? Are they liberal? Are they conservative? Are they NDP or whatever? And I like the party position for this argument that I think it helps inform the voter more quickly on where a candidate stands on issues and where their funding comes from.
Hmm.
Like right now, you have the Calgary Party, which is kind of the union, more NDP type party. And I mean, that's great. If that's how you vote, then you have a party and you have a home to go to, and then you have the opposite of that, which is a better Calgary. We are the conservatives running, and we want conservatives elected in city council. And when I checked out all of the initial platforms for the parties as they were being created, um, you know what? It just, you know, ABC made the most sense, and it was the most grassroots. So I'm not
Hmm.
supposed to say ABC. I'm supposed to say a better Calgary. Okay, and what I mean by that is they're the only party that held nominations. So I signed up almost 200 people in Ward 12, and I won the nomination for a better Calgary for Ward 12. And that
Hmm.
started my campaign off at a grassroots level. And a lot of those same people actually have become volunteers on the campaign. And so that is why I like the idea of municipal parties, and I like that the provincial government decided to try this out.
And what about at the provincial or the federal level? Do you have any affiliations there at all?
Well, I'm conservative. I am the conservative running for city council, and I know that in past elections it was all independent and everything is independent. But I'm okay to say that. I feel that conservative blue runs through my blood. I grew up as a conservative, and I just believe that conservative values are the best way to govern and raise a family and all that. So um, I do appreciate what other levels of government are doing, to push the cause forward. But my main focus is to encourage Calgary to stay in its lane, in its municipal lane, and stick to municipal topics. And
Mhm.
federal topics and all that stuff is great. And provincial, I know there's a little bit of overlap, but I really want to be an advocate to keep Calgary focusing on our essential services and spending that money toward that direction. And that's
Mhm.
really important to me, and that's the commitment I'm making.
Wonderful. Well, this is taking us right to the end of our interview. Thank you, Mike, so much for taking the time and sharing your perspective. And if you're going to leave one thing with our viewers today, whether or not they're in your ward, what would you want to leave with the viewers today?
Sure. Uh, well, Mike Jamieson, I am your conservative candidate for Ward 12, and you can. I encourage you, even if you don't live in Ward 12, you can check on my website. I do think it's pretty clever. It's ilikemike.ca, and you can see my full platform and all my policies and everything I stand for. And I appreciate you having me today, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak and let Ward 12 know who I am and what I stand for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mike. And thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in. Please, please stay informed, stay engaged, get out and vote. It's an important election for the city of Calgary, and your vote matters. So please get out and vote.
Thank you very